Speed. 10, take 1, A and B camera markers.
How far am I in?
How much are you cutting? On
Right
the wire?
there.
Right here, sir,
Yes.
Here?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like you to tell me, if you would, in detail, your experience on the day that Goebbels called you into the ministry and offered you the job of official filmmaker for the Nazi Party, and what happened subsequently.
It's a long story.
I hope so.
I had finished a film, The Last Will and Testament of Dr. Mabuse, in which I put into the mouth of Mabuse, when he steps into the body of another man, all the Nazi slogans. And the yellow shirts came. They didn't have the black shirts in these days, with two guns right and left, and said, Mr. Goebbels will confiscate this film. I was very haughty and said, if you think you can confiscate a film of Fritz Lang in Berlin, do it. All right, they did it. Now I had some trouble. The trouble was that the company for which I made this film had spent some money. And I tried to find a way to help them, and thought maybe that an interview with Goebbels would help, so that the confiscation would taken off. So one day I got an invitation, meaning an order, to arrive at the Ministry of to the Ministry of
Interior, Defense?
No, of stop it.
No, that's okay. Whatever.
To the Ministry of Propaganda. Now you must understand one thing in these days. You have to have a stiff collar, a tuxedo, cutaway.
Cutaway coat.
A vest, striped trousers, which was in its way already very uncomfortable. And I walked in to the Ministry of Propaganda, and immediately at the door was a big desk. And again, 4 people in yellow shirts with the guns. What do you want? I said, here's an invitation from the Minister of Propaganda who wants to talk with me. Well, they looked at it and then they said, look, you go around the corner and go along this corridor. And then you come to another corridor and then you go there. Okay. And so I walked this corridor. It was not very agreeable. The floor were great squares of cement. The walls were blank, no picture, no inscriptions, you know.
Yes.
The windows were very high that you couldn't look outside, and on top of it there were, how do you call it, when you couldn't go out, through the window. And I walked and walked and walked on this step, on this cement squares, and every step echoed constantly from the wall and back and so on. It was disagreeable. So I come to the end of the corridor and another corridor, and there is the same thing. Again a desk, again 4 people with guns in yellow shirts, the same procedure. Let's go in this direction. It happened 3 times. Finally, I came to a round room. It was very nice, and I didn't know what to do. So suddenly one of the door opens and out came a man, most polite, and said, Mr. Lang, one moment. The minister will be ready in a second. And in reality, in a minute or a minute and a half, he opens the door again and said, come in. I walked in. It was a tremendous big room. And the one side at least 4 or 5 big windows where you could look outside. Goebbels sat behind a desk, very, very far away. He had black trousers and one of these yellow-green shirts, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something very funny. Goebbels could turn on friendliness like a faucet. He came out with stretched hands, said, Mr. Lang, I'm so very, very happy to see you here. Come sit down. Okay, I sat down. And now I expected that he would talk to me. Why I had to put in the mouth of a criminal certain slogans of the Third Reich.
What were the slogans? Do you remember? What was one of them?
Hitler has said, not we, the average citizen has to destroy the authorities which he created, and then on the debacle, on the rest, we will create our realm of 1,000 years. And I had Mabuse saying exactly the same, only, and when everything is destroyed, on this rest, I will create my realm of 1,000 years of crime.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I expected that the minister would say something, but he didn't. So I was waiting, and he spoke, and suddenly he said, the Führer has seen your films. He didn't say which one.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, and he has said, this is the man who will give us the National Socialistic film. In this moment, to tell you the truth, I was wet all over my body. Perspiration broke out everything. I looked out of the window, and there was, I don't know how you say it in English, you know, a big, big post.
Yes.
Like you have it here with lamps on, and there was a 3-side clock.
Yes.
And you could watch the clock. And I said, how do I get out of here?
To yourself?
To myself, no, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I said to Goebbels, so help me God. But in essence, I said, I'm tickled pink.
Didn't you tell him something about your mother?
Wait a second.
Right.
I'm tickled pink.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked, and I was looking at the hands of the clock, and they moved, and my only idea was, how do I get out of here? Get to the bank, get some money out of the bank, and leave Germany. In a pause, I said, Mr. Minister, do you know, from my father, far back, centuries back, peasantry and so on, Aryan, okay. But my mother, she was born Catholic, but she has Jewish parents. And Goebbels said, Mr. Lang, we decide what an Aryan is. I bowed. I looked at the hand of the clocks, and they left, and they went. And then he started to talk about the film. No, before he said, look, we want you to become the leader of the German film. Therefore, I said to him, the thing about my mother, you know?
Yes. What year was this, by the way?
33, beginning of 33.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is March.
Yes.
And or beginning of March. And he said, you would naturally, under my guidance, become the leader of all the German films. I think that is wonderful, Herr Minister. What should I have said? Mm-hmm. Anything which I would have said against it. Anything which I would have said against it.
Okay.
11, take 1, A and B camera markers.
That button. Correct?
Okay. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Can we settle down now? Please? Okay, what did you say to Goebbels then?
When?
After he made you this proposition?
You mean when he said to me, we want you to become the leader of the German film? And
yes.
Yeah. I told you before, I had only one feeling, to get out of here. And the hand on the clock moved and moved and moved. And I said, Herr Minister, I don't know if you know one thing. My father comes from an old peasant family, 100 years back. My mother was born Catholic, but her parents were Jewish. So again he turned on his charm and said, Mr. Lang, we decide who is an Aryan. I said, thank you. What should I say? What could I say? I didn't want it to end in a concentration camp. So I started to talk and talk. And finally, he came and started to talk about the last will of Dr. Mabuse. And I looking out of the window, and I saw the clock comes closer and closer to the moment where the banks were closed, you know?
Yes.
So he said, look, there's a scene when the professor who runs the insane asylum in which Mabuse died is driving home. And suddenly near him appears Mabuse and tells him certain things. It's wrong. That's not good. And I listened. And he said, the professor has to be killed by the rage of the audience. Oh, Herr Minister, I said, that is a wonderful idea. I thought it stinks to high heaven, but what should I have said? Well, we talked and talked and talked. And finally the clock came to a point where I saw it was too late to go to the bank. Then with all his charm, he said, goodbye. I will call you in 1 or 2 days. Wait for me. I said, Herr Minister, I'm most grateful and most honored. Sabba, sabba, blah, blah, and walked out. I went to the bank. The bank were closed. So I went home. I lived on a place called Breitenbachplatz, which on one side was surrounded from houses, but on the back of the houses were empty places where this later could build houses, you know. Mm-hmm. And I said to my servant, Hans, he was Polish, I don't think that in the next days I will find a job here in Germany. I had constantly worked with France and with England, so fortunately I had a passport. I said, you know, put into the big thing everything what I need for maybe a month and a half. And then I had at home, I was collecting small Japanese things called
Netsuki.
Netskis. You said Netsukis, Netskis. And I had always 5 $1,000 notes. In these days, $1,000 were 1,400 mark or such a thing, you know.
Yes.
So I took the $5,001 notes and put them in my pocket. And as I looked out of the window in the back room, the whole house was surrounded by Nazis in yellow uniform. I said, oh, Mr. Goebbels didn't trust you. You see, today, when you think bad of this kind of things, you wouldn't think so because you don't need 150, 200 yellow shirts around the house to keep you, you know?
Yes.
But in these days, naturally, and under the influence of an hour and a half talk with Goebbels, I said, Hans, here's money. You go, which was called Bahnhof Zoo, Bahnhof Amt Zoo. And there I meet you at 8 o'clock. The train to Paris goes at 8 o'clock. Buy one sleeping car, one
Yes.
Things. Okay. Then I went to my sweetheart and said to her, look, you were once married to a Jew. You have 2 children. Nobody knows what may happen to you. Shall I take a part of your jewelry outside of Germany? We talked it over and she said yes, and she gave me some of them. And I arranged it so that I arrived 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's a train. And my servant Hans was very nervous, running up and down it, up and down. Said, Mr. Lang, where have you? I said, what is the excitement? He gave me my bills, and I stepped into the car, and we drove up. And I said, I will telephone you, or I will telegraph you that you come after me. Fine. Once I was inside the car, I went to my apartment.
One moment. What were the Nazis doing surrounding your house?
They had a maneuver.
You found this out later.
No.
As you left the house.
As I left the house, you know, they were all around. They didn't give a damn about myself. When I left the house, they let me go.
In other words, it just so happened that they were on maneuvers.
By accident that on this afternoon or nighttime they prepared for night maneuvers or such kind of a thing.
But when you walked out the door, you thought they might just as well have arrested you.
They might have. I thought so. Now, what could I have done?
Yes.
They would have arrested me inside or outside. That was the only way I could do.
So you just left the house and got into your car and went to the depot. Now you're on the train.
No, I went to my girlfriend.
Went to your girlfriend, then to the...
And then to the depot. Now, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the jewelry. I went to another car. And I had some white tape. And I put the jewelry with the tape behind the toilet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If something happened to me, it was not my car. I don't give a damn. And then I went to my car to hide the 1,000 mark bills. I took a razor blade, made a cut in the carpet, and then came the great disappointment. The carpet was glued to the floor. I couldn't put the money underneath. Now what can you do? I didn't know what to do by now. It was 10 o'clock. And I went to the dining room. I don't know how it is today. In these days was a big dining room, and then there was a small apartment where, when it was dining time, you could sit there too.
Yes.
But when it was after dining time, the waiters were sitting there and had their dinner. They knew me because I was constantly going to France or England, you know. He said, "How do you do, Mr. And I said, "How do you do? What do you want?" I just said, "Give me a whiskey and soda or water." And I sat there and said, "What are you doing now with your 1,000 mark bills?" And suddenly I saw a little glass box on the wall.
I'm sorry, we have to cut. Second marker.
Second markers, take 12, take scene 12, take 1.
You question?
I will. I'll just wait till it
Oh.
gets quiet. Okay. You were now in the dining car.
Yes.
And they had served you a drink. You were looking for a place to hide the thousand.
No. I was sitting in the dining car and didn't know anything. The waiters were with the back towards me, and I had my whiskey. And suddenly I looked up at the wall, and there was a little glass box. And in this glass box was a book of complaints, meaning if somebody didn't like anything, you know,
Yes.
he took the book out, wrote in his complaints and put it back. So when nobody watched me, I took this book out, put my 1,000 mark bills into it, put it back, paid the waitress, said good night, and went to my apartment. Now the train went and went and went, and I don't know how it is today. In these days, I think you stopped at Herbestal, and you have to wait an hour and a half till you got into Belgium, you know?
Mhm.
And during this time, there was an inspection of your luggage
By whom?
by the
Police?
no, by the railroad.
I see.
But this time, it was an inspection by the yellow shirts. So I was on the one end of the car, and I heard them on the other end of the car knocking at the door and said, "Open up, pass control." Okay, they opened up. The next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. And then they came to the one next to me.
The compartment next to you.
Yeah. And in my compartment, I was lying on my bed. And I remembered that I always had said to my actors, if you wanna give a good act, try really to do what you are playing. So I started to snore. I didn't sleep. I heard them in the next room. "Thank you," closing the door. And I was waiting now they would open. They passed by. And I said, Goebbels had somebody watching you when you left the house, and he had somebody watching you here on the train, and just in 3/4 of an hour, when the train is leaving for Belgium, they will arrest you. Make a much too long story short, nobody came. The train left, and still today, so help me God, I don't know why nobody came into my apartment. So I went, took the jewelry, next morning I took the $1,000 bills, and I was in Paris. But I still don't know why nobody opened the door. That's it.
How did you come to get into filmmaking? Can you take me through some of that? You were an art student in Vienna, a painter?
No. I ran away from home. I think any decent human being should run away from home. And after different experience, I landed in Belgium. I had an affair with a Eurasian. And friends said, you cannot go on like that. And they sent me to Brussels.
You were born in Vienna.
I'm born in Vienna. And in Brussels, there was an open, not a restaurant, a garden restaurant.
Yes.
And in the garden restaurant, they had a screen. When you paid, you saw the screen from the right side. If you didn't pay or less pay, you saw it from the reverse side. And there I saw for the first time a film.
How old were you? When was that? About?
1970, 1917, 18, such a time, I don't know exactly. The film dealt with the French Revolution. Later on, I went to Paris. And I lived in Paris. I painted. Many funny things happens, Let me say, for example, I had my easel in a street and painted the street. And an elderly lady came to me and said, how much is such a picture? I said, you want to buy it? Very proud.
Mm-hmm.
She said, yes. I said, why? What is interesting? She said, you see, on the other side, there, where you painted just now, is a hotel. I go in this hotel since 20 years with men every night. Okay. Another thing, I went to a bar and ordered a martini, which I liked already then. And I said, give me a very dry martini. Well, when he gave me the martini, I drank half of it and said, wait a minute, not so dry. So he said, he filled it up, and I got 1.5 martini for the same amount of money. And then I looked around, and when I saw a good-looking girl sitting with an elderly man, I went to the table and said, would you mind if I make a picture of the lady? If he liked it or not, he had to say yes, otherwise he would have hurt the girl. So I painted this film, so I sketched this film and gave it to her.
Sketch the drawing.
The drawing.
Yes.
And then I had a slight disappointment. She looked at it and then folded it very small and put it in her bosom. And I got 10 francs probably from the elderly gentleman. And then I forgot the name. It was a famous name who had a painting class. I was working there, and then I looked at film. It was the first time. And they made films about Arsène Lupin, about Rocambole, and these were all criminals once, which turned afterwards and did good deeds, you know, a la Robin Hood. And I became interesting because I made static pictures, and these were moving pictures. And there I started.
Film was really nothing then, though. I mean, it was kind of an artistic endeavor to be a painter. But what was it to be a filmmaker? What?
Wait, till then came the war. I had the chance, after many, many troubles, to leave Paris with the last train.
Take 1, A and B camera markers.
Okay, Al? Yes.
Well, I said that I got the last train from Paris to Germany. I had belonged to the Jaurès group, who was assassinated, was a left group. I was arrested on the Belgian border, but then probably this was just a gesture. Anyway, we escaped and I came to Germany. Now I have to go back to something. In Germany was an institution which was called the Einjährig Freiwillige. Means 1 year voluntary. When you had absorbed a certain high school, then you were entitled to live, to become a soldier. And after a year, you would have become the officer.
This is about World War I.
Yeah. And I had a hernia. So therefore, I was unable to become anything. So I had this hernia operated in between, and now I came back and I had no hernia anymore. Mm. And so I became a member of the Austrian army. I cheated. I had the feeling it was my duty to be in the army, you know? Mm-hmm. So I had to wait till they were ready for me. And in the meantime, I was working in a cabaret, in a very stupid act. And in the cabaret, I met the acquaintance of a young man who was working in a bank, and he wrote songs. And one day he said to me, "Why don't we make pictures together?" I said, "Fine." I still was under the influence, as I said to you, moving pictures, you know?
Yes.
Paintings, I couldn't do anything in these times. So we started to write together. After 8 days, I said to him, "Look, I make you a proposition. You sell them and let me write them." So we did. We sold 1 or 2, and then I had to go to the war. I was different time wounded, shoulder shot, everything. And in 1918, I was sick and tired. And I came back. And my nearsightedness, you know, which I had cheated at the beginning when I told you I was thinking to be my duty to be in the war, you know.
Yes.
Helped me. And I didn't have to go to the trenches anymore. I stayed in the backcountry in Vienna, what we call the Kader. And one day, I had a very, very wonderful sweetheart, a cabaretist, but I didn't have money. Wounded, losing my horse, everything, I had 120 kronen. What can you do with that? So I was sitting in a cafe. I remember as if it would be today, on the corner of a billiard, when a man came to me and said, "Please forgive me, Herr Lieutenant." It was very haughty and said, "Who are you?" He said, "My name is Peter Ostermeyer. I'm a representative of the play, stage play, the Hias." I said, "Yes," and I was wondering if the Herr Lieutenant would take a part in it. So I said, "What would you pay?" And he said 750 kronen. I had 120. Sometimes in my life, I'm getting a little intelligent. Not always, not very often, but sometimes. So I said, "That is very, very little." And he said, "More than 1,000 we couldn't play." Settled. Suddenly I had 1,000 things. And then came a disappointment for him. He wanted me to play a German over-lieutenant, you know, somebody who is more than a lieutenant.
Yes.
But I couldn't speak German in this way, I mean Prussian.
Got
I
a
was-
problem. 1 second. We'll cut here.
14, take 1, A and B camera markers.
Do you ask me or shall I talk?
No, I'll just say go ahead. You know what it is.
Huh?
We okay, Al? Yes.
Well, after I had my contract, there started a bad time for Mr. Ostermeyer, because I was supposed to play a Prussian officer, but I couldn't speak Prussian. I was always talking to my crew, which were 3 or 4 men, which has become a rather famous crew in the Austrian army, per you, per du, and so on. So he was forced to give me the main part in the picture.
It was a play.
It's a play. A main part in the play, I'm sorry. So I played it. And it was a big success. Friends, which I didn't know at the beginning, met me. And you know the name of Erich Pommer.
Yes.
Erich Pommer was serving in Romania, I think in Secret Service, I'm not sure. He was the head of Tekla Bioscope. And they said to him, "You should look at this man. This is a good man for motion pictures." Erich Pommer came to Vienna and I wore a monocle, always. And he said, "I don't want to have anything to do with this haughty son of a bitch." But he said, "Look, but we have talked to Mr. Lang, you have to talk with him." He said, "Okay, I will talk with him, but that's all." Okay. So we started when the play was finished at 10:30, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had a contract with Stekla Bioscope as a dramaturg.
As a writer.
As a dramaturg. A dramaturg is very hard to translate. No, a dramaturg is a
Story.
story doctor.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Germany was naturally dominating in the war. He had promised me that I would have no trouble with the Austrian army. They would let me go. I mean, after I got my furlough of 2 months. Fine. So I went there. Many funny things. I checked films. I didn't have the slightest idea about film in these days. In spite that I had written some and some were even filmed. But I don't know anything about cutting or how long and so on, you know. And one day, suddenly, 2 months later, I got a letter from Vienna. And a friend of mine said, look, you have to come back or you go to a court-martial. I said, they promised they would take me out of the army. They didn't do it. So I went to them and said so and so, and they said, wait 8 days. And then came my luck, the Great Revolution. And I had already, in the end of 1918, a job, whereas the other didn't have any job, you know?
Yes.
And so I started.
Let me ask you,
We have to cut now, Billy. Go.
A and B camera, common markers.
want some makeup? What was Germany like in the 20s? What is your recollection of that time? And did the social factors, do you feel it got into your work or influenced it in any way?
It's very hard to say naturally. In a certain way, probably it did. Maybe not at the beginning, you know? At the beginning, I wanted to make pictures. I wrote pictures in 4 days, in the evening, with a bottle of red wine. And in these days, you wrote one scene on one piece of paper so that you could interchange without rewriting everything, you know?
Yes.
I doctored, as I told you, on films. I wrote films and I wrote part for myself and I started to play. I became very friendly with Erich Pommer. The war was over, so he came. It was a main part in Stekla Bioscope. And he had very important acquaintances in Paris. So one day I wrote a film, forgot the name. I said, look, I want to make it. He said, all right. I shot the film in 4 days. And from then on, I became a director.
Yes, but you know what I'm getting at. What about Germany in the 20s, in your recollection?
Wait a second. I don't think that in these days, now we have 18, 19, that I was very politically minded, you know. At the time when I made Dr. Mabuse as the gambler and the second film, Inferno, there were big posters all over Berlin, a skeleton dancing with a woman. And the headline was, Berlin, Your dancer is death.
You're dancing with death.
If it influences me, I don't know. I personally think that I made my films with a kind of a sleepwalking security. I did things which I thought were right, period. And as I said, I had nobody, no model, which I wanted to be like, you know?
Yes.
And Eric Pommer was very nice to me.
Let me ask you, other artists of that period, like George Grosz, who was working in Germany at the same time,
Yeah.
was making drawings and paintings of the bloodshed, of the rampant criminality, of the dissatisfactions and evils of the society around him. Your films of that period, and slightly later, right on up through M, for 10 or 11 years, were dealing, up to the 1933 when you left Germany, were dealing with the social ills that we now look back on and see as the dissatisfaction that led to Nazism.
You have to cut, I'm sorry.
As being prophetic.
16, take one, A and B camera markers.
I mean, we'll work into the fact that you traveled with the police and some of the things that you saw. Yeah.
We're rolling.
It
We're rolling?
only with M.
Yeah.
Come on. Give me a question.
Okay. As we look back on your films that took place over a 10-year period, they were prophetic of the coming of the Nazi movement. They were prophetic of the depersonalization of man, the dehumanization, the robotization of man, of the criminality inherent in human nature. Most of your films that are remembered, that still live from that period, have dealt, whether you admit to it or not, with the social evils of Germany through the 20s and 30s. Is that correct?
I can't agree with you. I was not thinking very much politically before I finished Metropolis. This may come later, I don't know. As I talked to you, I worked with a kind of sleepwalking security. I was married to Thea von Harbu, became a German, and what I wanted to do was to make German films let me say, destiny, and then Mabuse, and then Metropolis, and so on. They were all legends or mysteries of Germany and so on. Probably, I was influenced when I met Dr. Mabuse. You cannot live in a country which has lost the war without being influenced. And
were you witness to any of the atrocities that we now know of that took place in Germany with the rise of the Nazi movement?
this came 33.
What?
The atrocities.
What were some of the things that were happening at that time that you saw?
Well, no, the question is wrong. I think you mentioned that from time to time I was working with a central police station on Alexanderplatz, and that I met there, or I met not there, but through them, with different murderers, which mostly didn't live up to the Lombroso theories, you know, with big eyebrows and big shoulders. It's very peculiar. I was and still am opposed to capital punishment. One day we walked into an apartment house where a man was accused of murder. We found cut off hands under his bed. Or another one, whom I never met, I heard only about him, who made sausages out of wandering young people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you haven't seen what I saw, for example, let me see a woman in a small shop where you can buy fruits and cans and anything, you know?
Yes.
Lying killed over the table where she sells things. I don't know how you call it. And her blood drops into a sack of meal. How do you call this white stuff from which you made bread and so on?
Dough.
Of
Flour.
Huh?
Flour.
Yeah, of flour. And the blood drops in. Drops. Only then you can understand why police is for capital punishment. I never was for capital punishment.
You were traveling, tell me that again. You were traveling around with the police in Berlin as
Not traveling. I was working with them. You see, it was a peculiar time. Let me say, women who sold at nighttime vegetables or anything good on big markets at nighttime. In the morning they sat and drank champagne and ate something. And I met a lot of criminals. And I was always very friendly with them. In M, I had a whole row of criminals who helped me. Naturally, the police shouldn't know about it.
I want to get that clear, though.
You have to cut.
Okay. Then I'll take
17, take one, A and B camera markers.
Okay.
Let's go back. You were going around with the policemen while they were making calls.
From time to time, I was curious. I wanted to learn something about human beings. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
I never worked with them. I never was a stool pigeon or anything. I just wanted to learn.
Then later, of course, you made a number of films about criminals.
No, not about criminals. I have to go back to something. At the beginning of my film career, if you want to use this word, I believed in fate. Slowly, with the years, I didn't believe in fate anymore. Fate is nothing that comes to you and you cannot escape. Fate is something that what you make out of your life. And my last films, which I made in this country, would have dealt with this. When I was in the United States, I met Krakauer, Siegfried Krakauer. I met him very often. He was expelled from Germany, and he was working in the Museum of Modern Art to write a book. I didn't know what. I never asked anybody anything about him personally. I saw him 12, 14 times, was very friendly. When I read his book, I was shocked, because it is untrue. There were 1 or 2 films during the 20s who may have had a relationship with the later days of Hitler, you know,
Yes.
but not the film industry. Not Mr. Murnau or anybody else. It isn't true. I think the Krakauer book did a lot of damage, especially for young people who believe in it. I became conscious of politics after I finished Metropolis, which I will tell you afterwards. And when you say my film deals with criminals, that's wrong. I try to put my finger on certain social evils. I'm not a politician that I can tell you how to change these evils, but I can point out to you that these evils exist. Now, let me say in my American films, for example, in what was the first
Fury?
one? In Fury, there still exists a kind of lynching when I made it.
Lynching, lynch mobs.
Yeah. It is an evil, but I cannot change it. I can only point it out. And the same thing is you only live once. And naturally, I will admit one thing. You know that here, in the schools, religion is not taught. How will you teach ethic if not with religion? I'm not a religious man, but ethic you learn only through religion.
What, you say you're not you're not interested in criminality, and yet there's the themes of all of your major films deal in some way with these social evils, with murderers.
With social evils, not with murderers. Mm-hmm. With social evils.
Wasn't the message of Metropolis at the time, could that not be taken as a Marxist kind of message, looking back on it now?
I don't know. I haven't seen Metropolis since a long time.
What's your feeling about Metropolis as a film now?
When I made it, I liked it. When I finished it, I hated it. And for a very simple reason. Because the thesis of my wife, Thea von Harbu, that's a go-between between capital, the brain, and the hand, workers should be the heart. I didn't believe it. Then in the 50s, anonymously, I got some pages from the Washington Post in which the head of a corporation said he has seen Metropolis and he agrees it is important to have a heart for the workers, you know?
Yes.
Still, I said, to hell with it. But then afterwards, at the end of the 60s, when I was from time to time working at universities, question and answer sessions, and I asked the pupils, what do you hate in the establishment? They said it is a computer-governed society, and they think that we miss in it is the heart. And certainly I said probably I was wrong, and Thea von Harbu was right. It is important to have a heart
to mediate between
yeah.
the worker and society.
Yeah.
Which was really the message of Metropolis,
Yeah.
or the theme.
Yeah.
I think we'll stop here and I'll go into Metropolis, the origins, tomorrow
Okay,
morning.
good night. Three.
19, take one, A and B camera, comma markers.
Started early this morning, I see. Mr. Lang, what about, I'd like to know if you could tell me the origins of Metropolis, how the idea for that film occurred to you.
I had finished the Nibelungen in Germany, and Erich Pommer. Nibelungen was a tremendous success all over Europe. Took it with me to the United States. We couldn't land. I mean, the boat landed in the docks, but we were still enemy aliens, and for some reason or the other, which I can't remember anymore exactly, we were not permitted to leave the boat in the evening.
Yes.
So Erich Pommer and his wife and I, we were alone.
Well, now, what year was that, and what was the city that you saw?
New York.
It was New York City from the boat,
What?
from the boat in the harbor.
Yeah.
And it was when, in about 1924?
I think 1923 or 24, I'm not exactly sure.
Were you conscious of anything like a Marxist theme to the
No.
picture? Because you mentioned that you were pretty much of a left-winger at one
No,
time.
not at this time.
Earlier.
Later,
Later, yes.
after Metropolis.
What about the criticism that it presents a view of man in general rather than man in particular?
Look, I think I shot it 34. I'm not quite sure. Can be 24. I cannot be sure about it. 24, 34, 44, 54, 64, 74. It's 50 years ago. I was interested in the relationship of the working class to a kind of dictatorship. But I couldn't tell you more. 50 years is a long time to remember these things.
Was there any signs in Germany at that time, which was, of course, late to industrialization? Were there any signs of an automated society approaching at that time, as you remember?
I don't think so. No, but don't forget one thing. The war was over 1918, end of 18, let me say. Beginning of 19, right?
Yes.
4 or 5 years later, naturally, you felt something. There were certain political assassination, which I didn't like. But I myself didn't have any political straight opinion till I finished Metropolis. I liked Metropolis when I was shooting it, And I told it to you already. I didn't like it when I finished it, because I think the end, the go between capital brain and hand, the workers, should be the hard was too easy.
Simplistic, you say.
Huh?
You feel now it's too simplistic. Or you felt...
Too simple.
Now, had you seen Hitler make any of his speeches before you did Metropolis?
No, not at all.
Because you know the central character, the head of Metropolis, is, when we look at it today, it almost seems as though Hitler had seen that character and modeled himself after this man.
Look, it proves only that you have never seen or heard Hitler. Hitler was a rebel rouser. This man who played it was a very quiet man.
Talking about his gestures mostly, and the kind of arrogance and the strutting, the way he moved and dealt with people. It's an impression. I could be wrong.
Wait a second. What about character? What about movement? What do you mean impression? It was a man who believed, seemingly, and I repeat it 50 years ago, who believed that a dictatorship was the right way.
Yes.
That's all.
Now, what about some of the technical effects in Metropolis, Fritz? These were things, obviously, some of the automation that you depicted. Did they exist, or were they purely were they designed out of your sleepwalking unconsciousness? Or did you copy...
Consciousness, not unconsciousness. I tell you one thing, different things are very peculiar. In these days, the labs in Berlin didn't exist like they exist here. For example, you couldn't say now, I would like to have this and this, put it into the lab, the people of the lab will do it. We have to do it in the camera.
There were no opticals, in other words.
Huh?
No opticals possible.
We didn't even have a big boom. Nothing. I had a very, very good cameraman, not Karl Freund, Günther Ritter, who died recently, who was in his way a genius. You know, he is responsible for the change of the girl into the robot. You know?
Yes.
I told him, look, I remember there's a shot where you see the girl sitting and slowly a part of her becomes metal and the other part is still living.
Yes.
I didn't want to have a straight dissolve from a living person into a robot. Slowly, you know, a leg changed and it came back as another leg and then again. The downfall of Metropolis was painted.
Yes.
Frame by frame, you know,
Mm-hmm.
by one of the very clever members of my crew by Kettlewood.
If you had had the ability to use sound then, would you have used it in Metropolis?
No. I tell you one thing. Many years later, I made a film called The Woman in the Moon. And one of the upper echelon of UFA, Woman in the Moon, was a Fritz Lang Film Corporation. And UFA had the release. And one of the higher echelon went, I think it was 29 or such a thing, to America. And he saw the first Johnson films.
Jolson, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, we want to have some sound in the film. And I said, no, I will not do it. Because in my opinion, if you show a silent film and then comes sound and then is silent again, you kill the rhythm of the film. So I had a fight with UFA, and UFA stopped paying the contract to my company.
Is the only reason that you worked with sound subsequently the fact that you couldn't work without it anymore?
No, not at all. I finished the film, and my lawyer, who afterwards became a National Social thing, which is in your contract.
Okay,
19, take one, A and B camera, common markers.
you want me to ask you?
Yeah.
We were talking about the use of sound. I had asked you if you would have used sound in Metropolis if it was available to you.
No. Some years later, I think 28 or 29, some of the higher echelon went to New York and they saw the film of Johnson. And they came back and asked me to put in, when the rocket started up to the moon, sound. And I said no, because I had the feeling that it would disturb the rhythm of the film. So they broke their contract and didn't pay any penny anymore. And my lawyer told to me, Fritz, you have to fulfill your contract. Exactly. You have to give your 3 main crewmen who worked with me in all my films. It's contrary to here. And an actress, Mauro, which I created as a star, and so on and so on. And I had to do it for 9 months. And I won the case. But in the meantime, something peculiar happened. I was sick to hear. And I wanted to become a chemist. There came a man with whom I generally wouldn't have spoken. You know? A so-called independent producer. I don't like producers. I don't know if you do. I don't. And he wanted me to make a film for him. Said, no, leave me alone. I don't want to make any films anymore. And he came, and he came, and he came. And 9 months is a long time. So finally I said, I will tell you one thing. I will make a film for you. But you have nothing to do than to give the money. You have no right about the theme. You have no right about the script. You cannot make any changes. I have to tell you which actors will be in the film, and when the film is finished, you have no right to cut. Correct? And he said yes. Otherwise, the film M would have never been made. I was sick and tired about the big films like Metropolis, you know, and so on. I wanted to have a personal film, a film that deals with one human being, with one social evil. And so I made them.
I'm going to ask you about that. Are we all right sound-wise? Or are you getting any problems? It's still okay? Okay. I've read that M was inspired by the Dusseldorf mass murder.
No, that is a lie. The fact is the following. I said to my wife, Thea von Habu, we want to make the ugliest crime. And we started to think about anonymous letters, you know. And then one day I said, listen, darling, I have another idea. How about a child murderer? And she accepted it. And then we started. The film script was ready long before they caught the murderer in Düsseldorf.
But you made up the story, obviously. You created it. But
we both created.
Problem.
camera problem.
20, take one, A and B camera, common markers.
Even though you made up the story of M. It was not from the newspapers or anything, Mr. Lang. You did spend a lot of time with the police at the Alexanderplatz station in Berlin, out of your curiosity. Did any of that get into the subject of M?
No, but I found out that the theory of Lombroso, that the murderer has to be square shoulders, have to have, and big eyebrows, you know, and that an audience bought it. And I didn't like it. On top of it, you know, it is one of this sleepwalking certainness, security. I tried to find an actor where nobody would believe that this could be a murderer. No?
Yes.
And I found Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre came, I don't know where he was born. He was working in a so-called Stegreif theater. That means you told an actor in a theater what it was all about, and he made up the dialogue.
Improvisational theater.
Huh?
Improvised theater.
Yeah.
Laurie hadn't made a film before M.
No. And this was not in Berlin. This was outside.
Where Laurie was working.
Between, I think, Vienna and Pressburg and the Hungarian side.
But why did you choose him? Why did you go for this particular actor?
Because I thought nobody would believe that a human being looking like Peter Lorre could commit horrible murders.
You're talking about the roundness of his features as opposed to...
His whole behavior.
What is Lombroso's theory, as you understand it?
No, well, that he was a big man, as I told you, and this big eyebrows.
No, explain. I mean, most people aren't familiar with Lombroso's theory of the criminal...
Today anymore.
What is it? Can you tell me?
I just told it to you, that any murderer has to look with big eyebrows and square shoulders, and he looks like, a murderer.
And you didn't believe that?
No.
Did the murderers you saw at the Alexanderplatz station...
Not one looked like that.
In other words, most of them were not evil-looking men or women.
Maybe evil-looking, but they were, in a certain way, normal-looking.
So a part, really, of the idea behind M, which was originally called Murderer Amongst Us, was it not?
Yeah.
A part of the idea behind that was to disprove Lombroso's theory.
No, I didn't give a damn about it. I wanted to make a picture. Look, you always think that there is a secret behind when you make a film. I don't think that I thought once during shooting the film about Lombroso.
It's only later that you... Why, now let me... The murder themselves, the molesting of the child, as in the first sequence, is never shown. There's the beautiful way you do it, where you see the girl's ball roll away and it stops. And
No. The first time, isn't it when he stands in front of the poster?
That's right, and you see his shadow.
Only the shadow.
Yes. But I mean, what I'm saying is that you never really see the events that he has committed.
I want to tell you one thing. Contrary, and I hate to say that now, contrary to different directors, I hate to tell American youth, you can commit crime and go free afterwards, you know? One. Number two, I hate to show violence. I did it myself in one or two pictures, but mostly in one picture when Gary Cooper fought a fascist. No, but look, There are a lot of things why I did it.
Oh, we have to cut.
Good. Okay, Bill?
Yes, sir. All right, here we go, roll.
Speed, quiet, please.
22, take one, A and B camera, comma markers.
In an interview you gave a few years ago, you mentioned that you dabbled in magic. You say you dabbled in a lot of things during the making of Metropolis, but you dabbled in magic, and that really the film has to do, among other things, with the battle between modern science and the occult.
No, it's not quite correct. As any interview is not correct. May I, for the moment, put something in which has nothing to do with your question? I hate to give interviews. I will tell you why. I usually said, when a director, or maybe the word is better, film creator, makes a film, and the film doesn't express what he wants to say, and he needs to give an interview to explain to an audience why and what, he's a lousy director, he shouldn't make any films. His films should speak for him. That is an interruption. Now give me the question again.
Were you
Yeah, I
interested
know,
in magic and the occult?
Look, originally, when we had the idea to make Metropolis, I wanted to show the fight of modern development against occultism. And we started to write, and when you remember Metropolis, there is a scene where the 7 deadly sins walk out of the church and so on and so on. And I had all the ghostly creatures, let me say, who sit on top of the church, you know, in Paris, walking out, trying to fight modern development. And then came a scene after the destruction, when the workers tried to repair the streets of Metropolis, when these occult ghosts, creatures, attracted by the fire, came and watched. And I said, no. Today maybe I would do it. In these days I said, no, I cannot do it. Therefore, on the door of Rotwang, the man who is opposed to the master of Metropolis is a hexagon. It is not what most people have thought is a Mogen David. That's it.
I'm not clear on the point that you made. I know there is a hexagon. I know it is a 6-sided star, not a 5-sided star. But what is the point? I mean,
the point is that I didn't dare to show the reaction of occult ghosts, of devils, of I don't know what, to modern science in these days.
Why not?
Have you never made, when you made a picture, something which you didn't dare to do?
No. I've never thought of it in those terms.
Well, look, it is the same thing why I didn't make the murders, why I didn't show the murders in Ulm.
You mean you didn't? Are you saying that you didn't think the audience would accept it?
Correct.
In those days.
Yeah.
What about the countdown scene in Girl on the Moon? That.
2 things. A countdown. If you start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, You will never know where the end is, no? Is the end at 15, at 10, at 20? You don't know. But when you start 10, 9, 8, 7, you come to 0, then you know that's the end. So I invented the countdown. And there's another thing very peculiar about the girl in the moon. The astronauts of the 5th flight said it was exactly what Fritz Lang showed in The Girl in the Moon. Then they came close to the moon.
Okay.